Hello, finance experts. My name is LeBlanc, and I'm going to be presenting a brief mutual fund analysis for you. Alright, so to start things off, we have our mutual fund data, which is composed of 4 and 5 star Morningstar rated mutual funds in 3 different sectors, which are the domestic sector, the international sector, and the technology sector. And as you can see, the related expense, turnover, and fee information is included in the data set. So the analysis that I performed on these stocks or these mutual funds was exporting the monthly return or the monthly change in price data for each mutual fund and calculating a monthly rate of return. And once I had done that for every month, I was able to average out those monthly returns and also calculate a variance on those returns. And using the variance that I calculated, I took the square root of that in order to calculate the standard deviation. And then using the standard deviation, I was able to calculate what's called the coefficient of variation, which is going to be my primary risk measurement. But for now, it is just simply the standard deviation over the mean of your data or the average of your data. And finally, to come up with an annualized return figure, I simply just took the average monthly returns and multiplied that by 12 in order to get an annualized figure for each mutual fund. So the 2 risk measurements that I utilized were standard deviation, which is a commonly used measure by investors in order to assess risk in a portfolio, and coefficient of variation, which is simply using the standard deviation over the mean, which serves a similar function to a Sharpe ratio in that it helps to measure risk. So for example, a common interpretation of coefficient of variation. So if you have a coefficient of variation of say 2, every $1 of returns on average would cost the investor $2 in risk. So the investor is going to want this number to be as close to 0 as possible, meaning that there's not a lot of risk or expensive returns associated with this mutual fund, meaning that the standard deviation is low in the portfolio, meaning that the risk of the portfolio is low. All right. So we have the same table from before, except we've added average returns, standard deviation, annualized returns, and coefficient of variation to the data set. Now, 2 things that any investor would like to have are high return investments with low risk. And in order to make this more apparent, I chose to sort the data first by annualized returns, highest to lowest, and then whatever highest to lowest figures we came up with, the lowest to highest expense ratios, because it's been shown that the more money that you keep or the more money that you save in expense ratios, the better performance your mutual fund has been proven to have. So in order to make that more apparent, I've sorted the table for you, and we have descending annualized returns here, and then the associated lowest to highest expense ratios for each of the mutual funds. So in this format, it's pretty easy to see which mutual funds you would like, high performance, low risk, and which mutual funds you wouldn't like, low performance, high risk. So the one that I really did not like out of this data set was a fund called TLIIX, which is the TIAA CREF Quant Large Cap Growth Fund Institutional Class. Right. The reason I didn't like it was first and foremost because it is very capital intensive, coming from a $2 million minimal investment. And then also, based on the data, it presents the second lowest returns coupled with the second highest coefficient of variation, which means it has the second most expensive returns in terms of standard deviation risk. And the fund has a relatively new manager as well, who took over in 2014. He's managed similar large cap funds at different funds, State Street Global Advisors and U.S. Active Group. And even though the fund does present a low expense ratio, it's so capital intensive that it's pretty easy to forget that. And one fund that I really did like was PGTAX, which was Putnam Global Technology Fund Class A. It started up around December 28th, 2008. And even though it's on the higher end of expense ratios, there's no loads attached to it like several of the other funds. And based on the analysis that I conducted, it presented the second highest returns at 13.442%, and the cheapest risk measured by coefficient of variation at $4.38 for every $1 of return on average. Also, the manager has been with the company for a little while. His name is D. Yao, and he's been a member of Putnam management team since 2005, became an analyst in 2008, and then became the fund manager in December of 2012. So he's been around, he knows the company well, and the fund's doing well, so having someone who's been there seems to be like a good strategy to keep things going in the direction that they are. And finally, the reason that I like this fund the most is because it gives the investor exposure to both domestic and international sectors in the technology sector as a whole, which has been continuously one of the most rapidly growing industries worldwide. So those are the two mutual funds that I've chosen, and that is the mutual fund analysis. Thank you for watching.